Let's start, though, with some news out of the Premier League, the continuing story around Arsenal's injury woes. Of course, Kai Havertz injuring his hamstring during a training session in Dubai. The club confirming this morning that he's going to have surgery in the coming days. He's out for the season. Hamstring's a big problem for Arsenal. Of course, Gabriel Martinelli, he's still out for at least another month with his hamstring. Bukayo Saka's already had a surgery on a hamstring. He might be back by early March. Best case scenario, Gabriel Jesus out for the season. He did a knee back in January, and that's just in attack. Some defensive injuries as well. Ben White, Takahiro Tomiyasu. As the injury woes continue to pile up for Arsenal, we welcome in our good friend and colleague Ian Darke for a little bit of commentary here. We heard the guys talking about Kai Havertz on yesterday's show. It's interesting, Ian, he's a player that gets criticized so much, and now the story is how big an impact this is going to be for Arsenal's potential title chase. What do you make of the Havertz injury?
I think it could be absolutely huge, because imagine if another of the strikers like Leandro Trossard now got injured as well. It looks like Trossard is going to have to play the kind of false number 9 role. He's done that before, but they could have to play Raheem Sterling. They could have to play the 17-year-old Ethan Nwaneri from the start of games. So it's looking very thin. And, of course, Arsenal's decision not to sign anybody in January, and may not have been a decision. They may just have not got any deals over the line, but they didn't. And that's looking quite expensive now. So I think it's a huge blow because, yeah, Havertz does get a lot of criticism, but he scores a useful amount of goals. He did last season. He did this as well. He's quite physical. He wins balls. I think he's in the top 10 in the Premier League for winning aerial duels. So it is a big hole.
Chuck, I'm thinking back to the Carabao Cup match against Newcastle. They had Havertz in that, and they were hardly dangerous enough. Without Havertz, without all those injuries, can Arsenal, just in attack alone, be dangerous enough to kind of continue this title chase?
Well, Arsenal's, with or without Kai Havertz, Arsenal's ability to chase down Liverpool, I think, hinges a lot on Liverpool right now, given the distance that already exists between the two. And yes, without Kai Havertz, you do wonder what the options are. Not that Kai Havertz was by any means a solution. We've had that discussion all season long. But when you look at what else there is, it leaves you scratching your head even further. So where exactly does Mikel Arteta turn? Now, I've felt Nwaneri, I think, would serve well through the middle. But of course, he's been needed on that right-hand side with Bukayo Saka's continued absence. You say early March, let's think probably more mid to end of March before he's back, or at least back to where Arsenal
contributing significantly, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Maybe then you can shift Nwaneri through the middle and see how that works for you. I like the look of him. Young, inexperienced, yes, but I think he's very talented footballer. So you give that a go. Other than that, I'm not sure, because as much criticism as, again, we've kind of leveled at Kai Havertz, Raheem Sterling is by no means any kind of an improvement.
Stevie, I was surprised watching yesterday's show. You were maybe a little bit more willing than Craig, but neither of you guys was willing, as a result of this, to kind of rule Arsenal out. What do you see from Arsenal? What's the evidence that makes you not want to rule them out yet?
Well, because previously they have scored goals from the middle of the park and they've scored goals from set pieces. So we shouldn't forget that. But they're going to have to rely on it. That becomes the problem. I think we've said enough about the front three. Nobody's picking any of those front three, certainly not in the top 5 or 6 sides in the country or the planet. Nobody's picking any of them to play up front for them. And so really it comes down to the middle of the park. And the likes of Odegaard has to pick up the mantle, and Rice has to do the same.
But that formula hasn't really gotten them close to this point, so why would it start to work now? When we're already taking away massive parts of this attack. I'm
not saying it's going to work, I'm saying it has to. They've got themselves in a point where they have to. You know, every team relies on the front players to score the goals. And if you can get goals from the middle of the park, set pieces, whatever it may be, then they're kind of a bonus, but they find themselves in a situation where they are now relying on the middle of the park and the set pieces to get them goals. That's a complete different when you've got to try and win a Premier League and you want goals coming from set pieces all the time. I mean, that's why it's almost going to be impossible, but it's not quite there yet.
Ian, how realistic do you think an Arsenal title push would be right now, given everything we know about this team and the injuries that are piling up?
Yeah, well, I'm like the guys. I don't rule them out completely, but this just made it a heck of a lot harder, and it was hard enough already with Liverpool 7-point lead. Doesn't look like Liverpool are going to drop that many points between now and the end of the season. Significantly, they do have to play Arsenal again, but that game is at Anfield. They have to play Everton again, which could be another steamy affair like it was last night. But it's Liverpool's title to lose, isn't it? And it got very much harder for Arsenal. I think they'll have to hope Saka gets back sooner rather than later.
Shaka, what do you think is more likely here? That Arsenal close this gap to a point where last day of the season there's still something to play for, or Liverpool win by more than the 7 points that they have an advantage now?
I don't think come last day of the season, it will be one of those where you've got two screens up and trying to figure this out. No, whether it's less than 7 points, almost depends on Liverpool. If this title is won 4 or 5 weeks before the end of the season, you could see Liverpool pulling the handbrake up and just kind of coasting through to the end of the season, especially if they go deep in the Champions League, and the gap maybe becomes 4 or 3 or whatever, but it's not a realistic 3 or 4.
Is it crazy for me to think that it's much more likely that it would be 8, 9, 10, that the lead would grow?
It's just that if let's say the gap is 9 points with 3 games to go, I could see Arne Slot playing his FA Cup team that played against Plymouth for the last 2 or 3 games, especially if he's got Champions League games to come and he's trying to rest players and maybe rotate a whole lot more, and then you drop points. So if that happens and all of a sudden the gap come last day of the season or end of the season is 3 or 4 points, it feels close, but the truth is it wasn't really that close.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we have some breaking news that sent shockwaves through the football community. Arsenal star midfielder Kai Havertz will miss the remainder of the season due to a hamstring injury sustained during a training camp in Dubai. This is a significant blow for the Gunners as they're already grappling with a series of injuries to key players. So, let's dive into what this means for Arsenal and their title hopes. Talk about the injury itself. Reports have confirmed that Havertz has torn his hamstring, and while there hasn't been a final decision on whether he'll need surgery, the focus is now on getting him fit for the start of the next season, 2025-26. This news comes after fears began circulating on Tuesday evening, and now we have confirmation from reliable sources like David Ornstein. Havertz was expected to play a crucial role in Arsenal's attack, especially with Gabriel Jesus sidelined for the season due to an ACL tear and Bukayo Saka out for 3 months with a hamstring issue of his own. Let's not forget Gabriel Martinelli, who is also facing a shorter spell on the sidelines. The Gunners are running out of options here. With Jesus, Saka, Martinelli, and now Havertz all unavailable, Arsenal are left with just 3 natural forwards: Leandro Trossard, Ethan Nwaneri, and Chelsea loanee Raheem Sterling. But here's the kicker: none of them are recognised central strikers. This leaves Mikel Arteta in a real bind as he tries to navigate through this injury crisis. And speaking of struggles, former Manchester United fullback Gary Neville had some strong words regarding Raheem Sterling's ability to fill in for Havertz. He claimed that Sterling doesn't possess the sort of intelligence required to adapt his game after losing his electric pace. That's a tough critique coming from someone like Neville. Sterling has had a storied career but has seen a decline in form over recent seasons. When he was at Manchester City, he was a force to be reckoned with, scoring 79 goals across 3 seasons from 2017 to 2020. But since moving to Chelsea, his performance has dipped significantly, and this season has been particularly underwhelming. The reality is, Havertz was Mikel Arteta's preferred number 9. With no natural replacement available and no central forward signed in January despite interest in Ollie Watkins, the Gunners are facing an uphill battle as they enter the final stretch of the campaign. Trossard may have to step up as he has played centrally before, but has struggling for goal-scoring form this season. And with both Saka and Martinelli also injured, Sterling appears to be the only other alternative left for Arteta. It's hard to believe that Arsenal finds themselves in this position. The depth of their squad is being tested like never before. And with players like Sterling who have barely featured since joining on loan from Chelsea, it raises questions about whether he can deliver when it counts. Neville pointed out that players who rely heavily on speed often find it challenging to adapt their game as they age. With Sterling recently turning 30 and having started his career at such a young age, it's understandable why some might see his body as having deteriorated quicker than others.